So is chapter 2 of the book of Nehemiah. So we're going to talk about today. In this chapter, we have, of course, Nehemiah, who is a Jew in Babylon, and the king, Artaxerxes, is going to send him back to Jerusalem, send him to Jerusalem for an errand for him, basically. Um, let's talk just a little bit about the Persian Empire at this time. It's a relatively peaceful time in Persian history. So Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, those three guys and some of their successors in between, there was a lot of battles, a lot of conflict, a lot of things going on with them. Cyrus, of course, was there as they teamed up with Babylon to take over the Assyrian Empire, and then of course Babylon took over everything. So Cyrus and was there as well. More so was there during the time when Persia ended up fighting Babylon and taking over. So Persia did to Babylon what Babylon and Persia did to Assyria, basically. So when he takes over, and of course he sees himself as the Cyrus sees himself as the fulfillment of Isaiah prophecy of the Jews returning to Jerusalem. So he kind of goes along with that. He's a bit of a religious guy. Persia was different in how it dealt with things as well, as we've learned in the book of Ezra. Go watch the videos in Ezra to get a little bit more details on Persia and Cyrus's perspectives on religion. He basically was a pretty open guy when it came to religions, which is very different from what Babylon kind of imposed their ideas on people, and Assyria definitely imposed. Persia, rather than ruling by fear, chose a new way of doing things, which was ruling by helping people to be loyal. If I help you out in your life, you're gonna be loyal to me as the king. So we need to have a mutual beneficial opportunity here. I make your life better, you keep me as king. Works out great. So Artaxerxes comes along. He is the son of Xerxes. Now, Xerxes hopefully is a name you have some familiarity with. Xerxes is the king that his army fought against Leonidas and the 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae. If you've never heard of that, this is your first time, you should absolutely study it. Go to Google and do a search, Battle at Thermopylae. It was a fascinating battle that is awesome. In fact, the movie 300 is based on the Battle at Thermopylae, the 300 Spartans who fought off the Persian Empire. Fascinating battle. A lot of great things were happening at that time. So in this time, this is after all that has happened. Persia's kind of pulled back from trying to take over up that way. And of course, that's going to change some of the global politics, because as Persia is the main empire, they're hitting a state of prosperity at this point. They've taken over a lot of land. They're kind of stabilizing things out through Artaxerxes' time. So he's not trying to expand as much as he's trying to just maintain what they've got. But because of that great famous battle at Thermopylae and other similar battles with the Persians and things, a lot of the tribal groups that occupied what we would call today Italy started banding together. These city-states came together and later would be known as Rome. And so that whole process is forming right now. That's happening. That's coming together. In fact, we're not far. I think we're probably, timeline-wise, I'm not sure if I have a note on this one, but we're probably early 500, or somewhere around 500 BC. So this is 100 years after the Book of Mormon started, after when Babylon took over Jerusalem and that area and appointed King Zedekiah. So we're about 100 years at least, if not maybe into the 480s, 490s of time, basically. So we're not far from the time when Rome becomes a dominating power. It's starting to form right now and be something. So that's kind of what's happening at this time, basically. And remember, Nehemiah is somebody who's many, many years after Ezra and everybody else has gone to rebuild the temple. So it's all that's happening, going on at this time, basically. So let's jump into chapter 2 here. It says, "And it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him. And I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence." So just a pause here just for a second. Remember, we talked about in the end of chapter 1, he is the cup bearer and what that means. So watch chapter 1 to understand a little bit more about Nehemiah's role in the kingdom, but he is right there next to the king. He interacts with the king directly and is a trusted person for the king. So Nehemiah and his family have some wealth and prosperity, which is probably why they did not go back to Jerusalem with everybody else. There was a group that stayed in Babylon and did not go back. Verse 2, so wherefore the king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid, and the king said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad, when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? And the king said unto me, for what dost thou make request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. Now this is just kind of see what this happens. So the king says, hey, Nehemiah, what's going on with you? You seem sad today. What's happening? You're usually not sad. He's like, how can I be happy when the land of my forefathers has been destroyed and my people are struggling over there? And so the king's saying, what do you want me to do about that? Is there something you want me to do, a request you're going to bring to me? Verse 5, and I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant have found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. And the king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be? And when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. So he said, I want to go back there. Send me on an errand to go back there. And the king's like, well, how long do you want to be gone? How long are you going to be away from us? And he said, okay, we'll do this time. And he said, okay, great. You can go. Verse 7, moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come to Judah. So those letters are basically permissions to go, hey, the king of Persia, who owns all this land, every king of smaller nations inside Persia is a subjective king to king of Persia. King of Persia kind of overrules it all. So the letters will make it easy to get through these smaller groups, like local governors or things, to get by everybody to get into Jerusalem. Let's see, verse 8, and a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace which appertained to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me, according to the good hand of my God upon me. So he's now got permission to get out of the royal forests wood to help build Jerusalem, bring wood in for the rebuilding of the gates. Verse 9, then I came to the governors beyond the river and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. So he's not going alone. He's got a royal escort going with him. Verse 10, when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, heard of it, it grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the children of Israel. So, and for them, these are groups, the Ammonites are groups of people that were sort of distant relatives of the Jews. They're living on the outskirts of what we would know as the land of Judah, or Israel. And they're not happy with this idea that the king of Persia is sending an envoy to understand the plight of the Jews. That shows political connections there. Now, Cyrus was definitely for it. Darius, his son, was definitely for it, because they saw themselves as fulfilling of prophecy. And then, of course, there was Xerxes, and he didn't do as much with it because he was fighting the other groups, other nations, and expanding. Artaxerxes is going, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Go, you can do this. So now it's like, oh, look, the Persian kings are now putting some emphasis on this. That might not go well for the people who are the enemies of Jerusalem, of Judah, basically of the Jews. So if you hate the Jews, and you now know that the Jews have some favor with the king, that's going to be hard to fight them. You're going to have a limit because the king is going to be able to step in. So they're not happy about this. Verse 11, so I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days, and I arose in the night, and I and some few men with me, neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. Neither was there any beast with me, save the beast that I rode upon. And I went out by night by the gate of the valley, even before the dragon well, and to the dung port, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates thereof consumed with fire. Now, this sounds kind of cool. So if we look at the footnote for dragon well, let's see, or fountain of the jackals is what it could have been called. It's a well located near Jerusalem. The dung port, another gate in the wall of Jerusalem at approximately junction of Hinnom and Tyropoeon valleys. The gate of the valley is also known as the modern day the Jaffa Gate, if you're familiar with the current Jerusalem. So that's kind of give you an idea of what he was looking at. In verse 14, then I went on to the gate of the fountain and to the king's pool. But there was no place for the beast that was under me to pass. So they believe, if you look at the footnote, perhaps a gate near En Rogel, the king's pool, could be Siloam. So that's the part of Jerusalem is where he's at to give a perspective. Verse 15, then went I up in the night by the brook, viewed the wall, and turned back, and entered by the gate of the valley, and so returned. And the rulers knew not whither I went or what I did, neither had I as yet told it to the Jews, nor to the priests, nor to the nobles, nor to the rulers, nor to the rest that did the work. So he went secretly to look at the walls and inspect what was going on. And he checked several of the different gates and looked around to understand what was the situation, what was happening there. So because that's his goal, is to rebuild those, to improve those. So now he has, he's understanding what is the need, basically, that I'm going to have to work with. So verse 17, then said I unto them, ye see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lieth waste, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Come, let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach. Then I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, and also the king's words that had spoken unto me. He had spoken unto me. And they said, let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for this good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite, and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian heard it, they laughed us to scorn, and despised us, and said, what is this thing that ye do? Why ye rebel against the king? Then I answered them and said unto them, the God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore we his servants will arise and build. But ye have no portion, nor right, nor memorial in Jerusalem. So they're like, oh, why are you doing this? The king ripped it down. Why are you defying the king to put it back up? Basically, was what they're being told. And they're laughing like, you guys can't do this. Your effort's not going to be worth it. And Nehemiah's going, look, we're doing something to help. And you guys have no say in this. We're going to do it. And so that's where chapter 2 ends, basically. So let's jump over in chapter 3 to continue the story of Nehemiah.